Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Skills Lab. Because human skills aren't soft, they're essential. I'm Heidi Peace, an educator, and I'm so excited to be here with you.
And I'm Kobe Campbell, a school counselor and a licensed clinical social worker. Our purpose is to encourage and equip you to build the skills for a better life. And whether you're feeling overwhelmed or just looking for a little motivation, you're in the right place. Although we come from an education background, this podcast is intended for everyone.
In every episode, we'll share practical tips, personal stories, strategies you can actually use. Plus, we'll answer questions and have some fun along the way.
So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's figure this out together. We're so glad you're here.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. Also, our views are our own and do not reflect the views of the school district for which we work.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Human Skills Lab. Today we're going to be talking about friendship, all kinds of things about friendship. In part, why friendships can feel confusing, draining, or they can also alternatively feel deeply nourishing and satisfying. So first, though, we're going to do a little accountability check-in like we always do from our last episode about New Year's resolutions. We are, as of recording, we are not quite at New Year's, but we're almost there. So Heidi, what was your sort of focus or goal for our last episode on?
Well, I had two big topics. TOO, too big.
Two.
Yes. And so I'll say what they were, but my main reflection is keep it simple.
Yes.
So that is what my accountability check-in is. I went too big on my goals, and I think that they are kind of too big to really wrap my brain around and really make functional steps for.
Okay.
So my two were to reevaluate and chunk up large life goals into small actionable steps and make a habit of reflecting and deciding if the goal is still worthy and like not being afraid to quit things. Okay, still a good goal, I think, but I also had another one because, too much. Take on carry-on size luggage, size of baggage, and unpack that, not the entire airplane. So I had two things that I was trying to merge together, but I think my reflection is that is too big and too wordy, and I can't post that on my refrigerator. So I need to get it down to like
A headline.
one headline.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that I can have it visible and really attain it. Like I think it won't be attainable in its current thing. So I need to rework mine.
Okay. I mean, I think that's what we do here, right? We try stuff out and revise if we need to. So for my accountability check-in, I was going to consider whether or not I was going to do a New Year's resolution, and my thought was that I was not going to. I think mine is also wordy, but I think it's ultimately smaller. It is to set a seasonal, self-compassionate, and flexible goal. That doesn't sound like I'm attaining anything, but really what it does is it gives me a focus or an intention for a season. A year feels too long. By, halfway through the year, I've forgotten what my word of the year is, and so that's not helpful. So I think a seasonal chunk is helpful for me, based on what it is what the pain points are at that particular season in my life. And then when that season is over, revisiting and thinking, okay, is this something I need to continue to work on, or am really finding success with and want to continue to work on, or has something else come to the forefront that I really need to figure out? And in terms of the flexibility, I think we can get into some really rigid things with New Year's resolutions, and I wanted the flexibility to be able to say, this was what I thought I could do, but that didn't pan out, and instead of consider myself a failure and quit, I'm going to revise and say, okay, that didn't work. What is a smaller chunk that I can try? Like we talked about last time, what is the tiniest? Maybe it's not tiny enough yet.
Right.
If this is something I'm really invested in, go down a notch, see what happens. Look at your environment and tweak. What can you tweak? What can you do to show up when you don't want to? Right? The tiniest thing that you can do to show up when you don't want to. So
And
that's my
when,
plan.
and when you have those tiny increments, you can have smaller barriers too.
Right. Right. You're
And
looking
they're
at your
not
barriers.
yeah, you're
And
gonna slow down on the barriers as well.
yeah, so you're looking more intentionally at your barriers and what is it going to take to overcome them, or how do I reduce this barrier, you know? So, all right. Well, good luck to us in the new year. So, for our purpose today, talking about friendships, I think the idea is that we want to simplify friendship into a few ideas that we can return back to that can make them less complicated, easier to think about, easier to navigate. So, with that, we want to talk a little bit about levels of friendship, recognize the limits of our brain, or the social limits of our brain, right? And the actual limits to how many relationships we can develop at a particular time. And then normalize that confusion around friendships isn't failure, it is learning, right? It's human.
Yeah.
Relationships can be tricky and complicated, and we all come from our own lenses and experiences, and that makes it even more complicated. So for today's discussion, we probably should develop a working definition of what friendship is. And so for today's conversation, friendship is voluntary, right? And mutual and reciprocal. You're choosing to spend time with people who reciprocate that energy and time and focus. It's built on trust and emotional support. It includes companionship and acceptance, and it exists on a spectrum, not a hierarchy, right? So you're going to have different sort of, you may move in and out of different levels of friendship with a particular person. It doesn't all fit neatly into boxes as much as we would like it to.
Right.
And so just because there is a friendship there doesn't mean that there is equal access, I think is one of the things that we might return to, is that we get to choose what we do with our time, and hopefully today's conversation will help those decisions become easier about friendships. So why do we need to investigate friendships? And Heidi, I'll toss that over to you.
Yeah. Our brains have some limits, and social interactions are complicated. People are free to act in however they want. They have different values. They have different emotional needs. It's just very complicated. So our brains have a natural limit. There is it's called Dunbar's number. And basically it was a research study that concluded that about 150 people can hold stable social relationships with each other. So that's how much your brain is capable of maintaining those social connections. And this is kind of widely seen if you're doing research, but it's also kind of famously in the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And these social connections require your emotional energy and your cognitive energy, and we only have so much. So because of how humans are, we're kind of like pack animals, right? We can have a certain size pack, but if it goes beyond that, it's just like too much for our brains to handle.
And let me note here too, introversion versus extroversion. Introverts' numbers might be even lower than that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about how many people you have the capacity, the social capacity to develop relationships with, if you're an introvert, and particularly a busy introvert, right, that number might be smaller. So this number isn't like a judgment on your life, right? It's just, this is the capacity generally. And what I didn't touch on in the definition of friendship, which maybe we can pull in here as you're talking about cognitive and emotional energy, is technology, right? Technology can require less emotional and cognitive energy because you have more time with which to decide how you want to respond. There's less social pressure, immediate social pressure in those situations, but it also can feel a little bit like it's diluted a bit because of that lack of in-person connection. So there's a technology piece too to friendships that can play a part and can affect that number, but also something we want to think about is how many of our connections are technology based versus in person, because that really does affect. I think there's a balance to be had between those technology based friendships and interactions and actual in person development of relationships.
And that makes like a perfect segue here because proximity matters. And sometimes that technology can bring people who maybe are not close physically, but can bring them together. And that can be a real positive use of technology.
Yes.
So proximity matters. About 150 feet is when we can no longer recognize a face. So physical space matters. The number of people matters. Communication drops when we are 164 feet away. So if we are too far apart, like we really can't have the conversation. And then also communication skyrockets within 19 feet. It's almost like you feel like compelled to say something or nod or smile or make eye contact
Yeah.
when somebody is close to you. Now, this is not always true in all cultures. This is not always true in all places. And like when people are trying to leave a stadium, they're trying to get out of there. So they're just walking. But still, you're more likely to have those unplanned interactions with people just because they're close by.
Yeah.
We magnet towards people through our proximity and our frequency. So the more frequent your interaction with people and the more closely you are physically together can really increase those chances of you connecting.
That makes sense to me because, friendship is built through shared experiences, right? And so
Right.
the closer you are, the more frequently you see them, the more shared experiences you're going to have. So that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, and then it also kind of brings up the idea of seasons in our life. For instance, if you are in your 20s and you're maybe in college or having a first job, like you're in a different season.
Yeah.
And so you're going to come into contact with a lot of people that are in a similar season. And then if you're at a different stage in life, like you kind of magnet towards that. For instance, I'm in the sporting age.
Youth sports, yep.
So I sit on the sidelines a lot. And who do I sit on the sidelines with?
Yeah.
Well, other parents that are in the exact same situation. So sometimes those seasons are literally a season, like a sports season. And sometimes they are a decade or like early parenthood or, college age or whatever. Those seasons can be a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And what we just want to remind you is that closeness isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Like our brains are wired for closeness within proximity and a smaller amount of people than you might imagine.
Yeah.
So, what are the different groupings for what's most beneficial and how our brains work? Well, our besties, those are our closest of the close friends. You are sharing deep personal things with this group. And that range is between 5 and 15 people. That's it. So you think about like your entire, I was going to say Rolodex, but that really dates me, so I'm not going to do that. My entire like iPhone contact list.
Contacts.
Okay, great. I've updated. So my entire contact list, and like there's way more than 5 to 15
Yeah.
names on there. And so you think that what makes those friends different is that you have a vulnerability with them. You trust them. You can share secrets or things that are private to you. You have emotional safety with them. And you have invested a high amount of time, and they have also invested that with you. The next grouping is good friends. Those are the 15 to 150. So like if you imagine like these are people that like you would share some of your close vulnerable thoughts, but not everything.
Yeah.
So that's this group. And your brain can still handle that. So this is like within our comfort zone of how much our brains have capacity to hold the emotional energy needed and the cognitive load needed to maintain these friendships. And then these friendships should be enjoyable and reliable to fit into this category. Now, this is the one that gets, I guess, trickier. These are the acquaintances, and that's about 500 people. Now, the acquaintances should be kind of fun to be around, and maybe they're activity based or situational. Like I started playing pickleball, so like my pickleball group would fit into this category. Like maybe I go to their house every once in a while, maybe I see them a few times a year. It's definitely really fun, but I'm not going to give them my social security number. So, so there's different levels. So we have besties, good friends, and acquaintances so far. And then there's the largest group, and that's the faces you can identify. Now, I think this is also a range. So again, we're not trying to judge you, but this is about 1,500 people.
And I think it's important. This is your brain's capacity. If your numbers are different than this, that's your capacity. Or if you'd like to grow your numbers in a certain area, that's certainly possible. But I don't want anybody to feel bad that like I don't have 500 fun acquaintances. Our lives dictate what we're capable of and our personalities, and so it's important to note that this is what your brain is capable of, and your numbers will vary.
I always had like this funny thought. I was like, hey, maybe I can make a guess who game. You remember that game where
Oh,
you have like the people's faces in cartoon form and it has
oh
like
yeah, I have that in my office. I play
yeah.
that with kids.
So I was like, what if we did that for like like our acquaintances? So you could like really review their faces and make it into a fun game. I thought that would be fun.
That would be really cool.
Anyhow, the
That's our next project then.
the acquaintances are a very large number that your brain can hold and identify, but these you don't have to have a relationship with these 1,500. But that's it. That's the limit of the brain. And then finally, we have forced friends. So
That sounds fun.
forced friends are going to be maybe they're like a package deal. They come with maybe they're your next door neighbor, maybe they're a coworker, maybe they're somebody who's sitting at the next dinner table over
Or they could be
on
part of
your
a
cruise
group.
ship, and you're
Yeah.
going to be with them for an entire week, and you
It
have
could be part
assigned
of a
team.
group too. Like these are the
Yes.
friends that I get along with best, and then there's another person in this group that belongs to the group, but maybe they're not somebody that I really am feeling that great about.
So yeah, these forced friends are kind of like they go with it. So some examples we gave you, but additional samples are like maybe family friends. Maybe they're friends of your parents, but not really of you, but they come to all of the events. Maybe it's other team parents on the side of the soccer field. Like I said, like they're my buddies, but sometimes maybe they're not your buddies, or maybe you don't really know them that well because they always sit on the other end. So maybe these forced proximal people you can also consider as just people that you want to have some connection to, or identify how much connection you would like to invest in, if that makes sense. Because I
Yeah.
think all of these relationships, it all comes down to an investment of your time, your cognitive load, your emotional load, and all the things that go into a friendship. And remember that those forced friends, if they are not positive relationships, you might want to have them in smaller doses. And there are things you can do to kind of increase the odds of those being better relationships. But just to really, I think it's just the act of just understanding that those exist can really help you.
Yeah.
Like it can help you to go into those social situations and just be aware of what the relationship is. Just taking like an honest look at it.
Yeah, because I think there can be some avoidance, right? And what's the word I'm looking for? I don't have it, but there can be some.
That's
Imagine
fine.
that. There can be some avoidance or trepidation heading into situations where these people exist in your environment. And I think that can be part of the inner work that you do around friendships is that recognizing what triggers you about them, and making a plan for how you're going to handle it, taking off that emotional overlay, realizing that people come from different lenses and experiences, and we don't know their background. We don't know why they do what they do. Doesn't make them bad people. It just means that they might have a different set of values than we do. They may react or interact in ways that don't feel great for us, because of where they come from, their experiences, and it just means they're not our tribe. They're hanging out with our tribe, but they're not ours, right?
Right. Okay, now that we know the limits, now what?
So now that we know the limits of our brain and we are considering the limits of our own personality makeup and the way we like to move through life, our own experiences, asking yourself some questions, being reflective about the relationships that you have in your life, friendships, besties, good friends, acquaintances, forced friends. How do you feel after spending time with them? Is the relationship one-sided or mutual? I mean, that makes a big difference. Is there trust? And then not only why are you in this friendship, but why are they? Like, we can't know for sure, but we have clues. Like, what are they doing here? Right? Is it because we have a certain resource that they want or need or like? Is it that we give support where they need it, but maybe it's not reciprocal and mutual? So lots of different reasons. And just to be aware of our own investment and energy, or our energy investment, right? So when I work with kids around friendships, this applies to adults as well. You can sort of rate your friendships based on these questions to green zone, yellow zone, and red zone friendships, right? Green zone are the healthy friendships. Yellow zone are maybe those wobbly friendships. You're not entirely sure, they might take some monitoring. And red zone are unhealthy friendships or friendships that you might want to limit. So in the green zone, healthy friendships, you feel happy, safe, calm, accepted, right? You can be yourself, make a mistake, do something kind of dumb, and you're still feeling okay. There's kindness, respect, trust, and fun. You can trust that if you do tell something in confidence, either the rest of the group or other people are not going to find out. Disagreements happen in friendships and relationships, and they're manageable. There's a desire and a motivation and an investment in working out that disagreement, coming to an understanding. And these are the friendships we really want to invest most of our energy in. Those are the ones that help us to feel most connected and supported, and good about ourselves and our lives. Then yellow zone, our wobbly friendships, might make us feel unsure or uneasy. We might get mixed signals or more conflicts, right? Maybe it goes beyond disagreement to conflict. And it may need some communication or boundary set. It might take a little more work. And we may or may not want to invest in these relationships. Just because there's conflict, just because you feel unsure or uneasy, doesn't mean it needs to go. It just means you need to take a look at it. How long have you been in this friendship? Have you shared enough experiences to really make a determination? Do you know this person well enough? Maybe after getting to know this person better, some of that uneasiness goes away because you kind of understand more about them. Or maybe not. Maybe that's a time when you need to set some boundaries on that.
And I also want to add that sometimes these people are the best people to tell you the hard things.
That's a good
Like,
point.
you kind of need some like disagreeable people in your life that are willing to say the hard thing and to have the conflict. It's like if you can imagine like a boss who only hears the positive stuff because they only have yes people around them. Well, is that what's best for the company?
Yeah.
Probably not. So, and that's also kind of not as good for our development. Sometimes you got to have a friend that's like, no, that's a dumb idea. Don't do that. And
However,
and
that
maybe
friend,
you can still make your own choice.
yeah,
But you don't want to always have those yes men around you. So
yeah.
those wobbly friendships, you may not want to hang out with them all the time. You may want to decide if they are worthy of investment, but also understand that they do provide some amount of honesty and reality, or can. In
And
certain
let me
situations.
clarify the friendship worthy of investment, not the person, right? We are
Yes,
disconnecting,
friendship. Yes.
yeah, the person from whether or not we want to spend time with them. The
Yeah. Thank
person
you
is,
for that
yeah,
correction.
completely worthy, but it
See,
may not be.
you're taking on those minor conflicts and you're saying the things that need to be said, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Okay, so those are our wobbly friendships, and I kind of hope that the people who can tell you the hard stuff reside in your green zone friendships, but there is value in those
Mhm.
wobbly friendships too, I think is what you were pointing out, which is great.
Yes. Yeah.
Then when we get to red zone friendships, unhealthy friendships, you might feel anxious, hurt, or diminished. There might feel like there's disrespect, manipulation, or exclusion. And these require limits or distance. It's over a period of time you've come to see that there's a pattern of behavior and that it is not a pattern that benefits you. In fact, it's one that actually hurts you. You may even have tried to address this with the other person and it didn't change, or your concerns were not taken seriously. You were maybe made to believe that you were being too sensitive. There wasn't a regard for what it is that you needed in that friendship. And so those are the ones that I think we really do want to make sure that we're setting some limits on. So we might want to pay attention to what's going on in our body, how our body feels, how our nervous system is reacting, and whether it feels safe to address the behavior with the person. And then that's where the tricky decision comes. Do I risk addressing this with this person, or do I feel like my energy is best used elsewhere? You know, and I think it's worth talking about that there is a risk anytime you're putting yourself out in a friendship, whether you're getting to know somebody new and they really seem like they could be a green zone friendship, or it's a yellow zone friendship and you're thinking, I wonder if I can address some things, and it could turn into a green zone friendship, or addressing those red zone things that you really feel like strongly you need to set a boundary on. There's a risk of rejection, and our brains are wired for connection, so that makes this inherently, right, a little bit risky. And so that discomfort and that fear of rejection, some fear of rejection, is completely normal, right? I think that's worth noting here.
And so, how do you know? And I think the only way to really know is if you look at how your body feels. So, you go internal and you can kind of feel this out. Now, this is hard for some people, especially if you haven't practiced it. But how do you know if it's a green zone, a yellow zone, or a red zone? And I think you can feel it. I
Yeah.
think I think it's not just like butterflies or nervousness. If it's a red zone, I think you feel it deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so I think you can also feel that yellow zone pretty clearly too. And you know when somebody is being disagreeable to help you, or disagreeable to throw a wrench in your life.
Yeah, and I think it comes along with some nonverbal too, some tone of voice, some body language. I mean, I think we can take a look at that too with our yellow zone friendships, in terms of how was this intended, right? Those social cues that we learn to pick up, hopefully, can give us some clues as to what the intention is there, you know. And there was something else I wanted to say about that, but it went right out of my head. So if it comes back.
So pay attention to how your body feels, your
Yeah.
nervous system knows. Like, pay
Yes.
attention. The signs are there if you are listening for them. But again, this does take practice, so don't be mad at yourself. But I think just understanding that there are different zones can really help you to know where to invest your time and energy.
Well, right, and to not feel bad about, like to understand better, oh, these people belong here. There's a reason why I feel this way, and it's okay to have this level of friendship with this person while I have another with this person. I remembered what it is I wanted to say. The tricky part becomes for green zone friendships, or any friendship really, if you tend to be an anxious person, particularly if you have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. I think that can be really tricky to pay attention to your nervous system because you're working on regulating your nervous system in general. So that gets really tricky. And I know anxiety is on the rise in all age groups. So I wanted to mention that here, you know.
Yeah.
So pay attention not only to your nervous system, but how, like those nonverbal things that we're talking about that we've learned to pay attention to. And how you feel, not just in your body, but in as you're thinking about your anxious people will likely overthink. You know, introverts, anxiety, they kind of tend to go, will likely overthink lots of different interactions, even with green zone friends, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Anxious people tend to be overthinkers. So, so divorcing that sort of nervous system, those anxiety symptoms with a larger nervous system in general. How does this person make me feel? Are they interested in knowing about my life? And are they supportive? And can I be myself, my anxious, wonderful self with them? And it's still okay, you know? So that can be a tricky thing that I wanted to mention since anxiety does tend to be on the rise in lots of different age groups.
Yeah, it's a really good point to make, and we aren't. This isn't easy.
Nope.
We so because we can't like open up somebody's brain and look inside and be like, what are your intentions for me?
Right.
Like,
Nope.
we can't do that. So we can use the clues we can use. We can know that there are different zones and there are different seasons, and not all friendships last forever. And they tend to go a season of life. So we can know all of those things, and it can help point us in a better direction. So how else can we use this information? We can understand that we have a finite amount of energy, resources, and especially time, right? So if we've kind of concluded that we deserve those green zone friends, and that our time has a limit and our energy is precious, what can we do to cultivate and use these resources wisely?
Yeah. So I think the recognizing that you deserve green zone friendships is a big first step. Like, recognize that you do deserve people in your life that support you, that you can trust, that you can be yourself with. I think another important part of how we can use this information is cultivating the ability to be alone, right? Some of us need that. Even, I'm not going to speak for extroverts because I am absolutely not one, but I think my opinion is that everyone being able to cultivate the ability to be alone is a very useful skill, because there are times in your life, some more frequent than others, that number one, you are going to be alone. Maybe you don't have you're in a season of life where there isn't that much, you're too busy, or there isn't that much that you can do to develop these relationships. But I think it prevents the chasing of friendships that are not healthy for you, in order to be like having the skill of being able to be alone and be content and developing your own hobbies, interests, self, right? Can be preventative to chasing those friendships just because they're there. Like, I'm going to go hang out with these people because it's convenient, when it's ultimately not healthy for you.
Right. And I think that there's that fear of missing out, that FOMO that people have. And if you have good stuff going on all by yourself, you can feel better. You're
Yeah.
like, I don't, yep. And I think everybody's life can be on display now, when it didn't used to be. And I think that our youngest humans have grown up in that culture. And like we could run and hide when we were teenagers and little kids, and we didn't have to be bombarded with what my best friend was doing.
No,
But
there's no
now,
constant connection now that I believe is unhealthy, and that's a whole other episode, but I feel like constant connection is a thing to be taken on, you know.
right.
The
And
ability
you're
to
not supposed to see everything. At least that's not how it's been for the entirety of our brain's evolution.
yeah.
So now that we can see it all, we really do. It's really important to develop those skills to be alone.
And really the skill to make intentional decisions about how you're going to use your time and who, like what relationships you're going to invest in, and which ones maybe you don't have the bandwidth for at this point. So using that information to make intentional decisions about your time, developing the skill of being alone and making the decision to do that if there isn't a healthy alternative, or if you feel like that spending your time in that particular relationship right now is not possible or needed or healthy. In order to do that, we come back to values, right? Taking a look at in your relationships, what are the must-haves? What are the things that are just non-negotiables for you, right? That might be honesty, it might be integrity, it might be trust. I think trust and respect are non-negotiables for a good, healthy friendship. Then you have the nice to haves, the things that would be great. Funny is a nice to have, right? It's great when we have funny friends, they make us laugh. But is it a deal breaker? Probably not. And then the last category is deal breakers. Like, what are the things that you just know these don't belong in my friendships? Like, this is not going to be a healthy friendship for me. And then aligning your friendships with those values as much as you can. And I want to say here that go back to the fact that there is no number of trusted green zone friends that you need to have.
Right.
You have what you have, right? You have what life has given you and you have cultivated. And that may not be the number that you want. There's always, opportunities to put yourself out there and try and find more and different. But I think the judgment about how many needs to go away. I see that a lot with the younger crowd,
Right.
I don't have as many friends as this person next to me. Well, is that okay? Yeah, I think it is,
I
And
think
then,
that being like curious about others and open to new friendships is just a healthy way to be.
Yeah.
I'm open to new friendships and I'm going to invest in the ones that are the healthiest and the best and the most
Yeah.
rewarding. I
Yeah.
think that's like the best advice we can give.
Yep. And then when we're using this information for making decisions about developing more, like developing a friendship more, monitoring a friendship or limiting a friendship, we can use the nervous system and social cues that we pick up to decide, do we need to have a hard conversation, or do we need to set some gentle limits? And not necessarily, some will be verbal, spoken limits, some will be just declining of invitations. And not every friendship requires a confrontation or, an addressing of those issues, right? You can decide to adjust access versus, when you become clear on patterns of behavior and or you've tried to address it and it hasn't changed. It doesn't have to be a big confrontation. It can just be adjusting the access that they have to you. So those are some of the ways that you can use the information that you've gotten not only from your nervous system, but from the rest of the information we've given you here. So.
All right. Well, building those healthy relationships is our goal, and we can be curious. We can hear all the voices, be open to diverse voices, even the ones that maybe don't agree. Be a connector, be friendly, use appropriate eye contact and body language that you would also that would imply that somebody is being respectful, that you're using that same sort of respectful language, and this does vary from culture to culture. So this one you're going to have to interpret based on your cultural lens, and then evaluate your relationship with technology. So technology is tricky. And I think without going into too much detail about it, it has its place, and it can help us to have proximity when we actually don't have real
Yeah. Physical
locational
proximity, yeah.
proximity. And it can help connect us with maybe a very, say we have like an interest in like Star Wars or or health or whatever. We can find that group that maybe is not in our 19-foot radius.
Or even 164 feet, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So using technology does have its place, but understand too that technology can also make us feel like we are closer than we are. So to use it like those mirrors on the side of a car, maybe closer than, but it's like
Objects may be closer than they
yeah,
appear.
but like this is the opposite. It is like, well, you may appear closer, but it's not.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind that the mode of how you connect with people does affect the connection.
Yeah. And although it does take less sort of cognitive and emotional energy or to connect via technology, just maintaining that balance and making sure, because that in-person connection does have a different quality, you know.
And remember that building relationships is a skill. It's not your personality trait. So it's not introversion, it's not agreeableness. It is a skill.
And it's
we
something you can develop.
and we can practice this, and you're going to have ups and downs. And you're not going to get it right all the time, and that's okay. You can keep working on it, and you can get better little by little.
So what happens when nothing goes to plan, or what happens like when things don't feel right? Friendships do shift. Some friendships have a life cycle, and maybe you've shifted out of the phase of life that life cycle is in. You're no longer in youth sports, or that program has ended if you're in school. Sometimes we maintain connection, sometimes we don't. So that's okay. I think it's good to normalize that can happen. People come in and out of your life. Some discomfort and fear of rejection is normal. So if you're feeling that in your friendships, it's not necessarily something to throw out. It's something to take a look at. How old is the friendship? Do you know them very well or not so well? Is there potential for development of a better friendship? And just monitor how you're feeling. I think also things to keep in mind are choosing yourself doesn't make you unkind. Protecting your peace and your energy level does not make you unkind. Maintaining grace and social, norms is good and expected, but limiting access to you by people who are not healthy for you is not unkind. And then sort of the purpose of friendships and relationships is support, peace, safety, alignment, connection, all of those things that make us feel good and grounded, and fun, right? That is a purpose as well. But when we're looking at relationships, if we're not feeling good and grounded, it's okay to say this is not the investment that I want to make in this relationship, and also that it's not necessarily the person who is unworthy of investment, it's the relationship, right? They may just not be your tribe.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, no shade on anybody. Maybe it's just not a match.
How boring would it be if we were all
The
compatible,
same.
right?
Yes, exactly. So what is your tiniest next step on the topic of friendship?
I think, strangely enough, I think it might be to write down some must-haves for me for friendship. Like really take a look at my values around friendship, and kind of do that must-haves, nice-to-haves, and deal breakers list for me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine is when I have the bandwidth, when I have the time, to be the person that reaches out to connect instead of waiting for some nice extrovert to come along.
I might switch mine to that. I might switch mine to that. Being an introvert myself, sometimes that reaching out, like I really like my alone time, my time with my family,
Yeah, and it takes planning to get things to happen, especially with a larger group.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to put it on the calendar and I'm going to reach out when I can.
Sounds good.
All
I've
right.
officially changed mine to that too. So,
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you're not alone. We're all figuring out our lives and our relationships together, one step at a time.
and you have got this. This week we encourage you to choose the smallest step forward. We always go back to the tiniest next step and just keep going. Give yourself grace. You don't need to do things perfectly. You don't need to have perfect friendships or the right numbers, right? Friendship is a skill that you can develop, and small changes, the tiniest next step, adds up to big progress.
And we're so proud of you for showing up and to even just think about how to improve your friendships and to be more intentional about them. I mean, that's a really big step and it can have some long lasting influences in your life. So keep showing up, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.
And if you like what you hear, click the subscribe button and feel free to leave a comment or question. We'd love to hear from you.